Johnson's going to take the shotgun snap. He's got it. Fakes to give to Stockton. Keeps it himself. Hesitates into the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Boy, that was a nice move. Made a move to the right, stuck that right foot in the ground, cut back left, and found a lane to the end zone.
All right, and thank you for watching the Lions and the Browns, and thankfully the preseason is over, TJ Lang.
I think the highlight of the game was when the game was over for me.
I think for a lot of people it might be. We saw that touchdown run from 1 yard out for Josh Johnson. He certainly had himself a nice night tonight. 8 for 12, 170 yards. He passed for a score. He ran for a score. How did he set himself apart from Tom Savage, who was 5 for 9 for 33 yards, in your mind?
Yeah, I think you got to take into effect, too, that, when Tom was back there, the protection wasn't great. I think when Josh came in, the protection got better. He just brings a total different dimension than Savage does, as far as the touchdown where he had he beat two guys on that play.
Yeah.
You see the athleticism, you see the way he's able to pick up a first down with his feet once in a while, just to keep the momentum and keep the drives going. I think that's a big factor into what he can bring. And if the competition is for the backup is decided off tonight, I think he was definitely the clear winner.
The first sack on the first play for Tom Savage. Obviously, like you mentioned and alluded to, the coverage was not great for him. How much is that on the offensive line? How much is it on the quarterback to try to create something?
I think there was a good mix today. I think there was a couple times, the first play of the game, he had no shot. The guy came clean up right up in the middle of the defense, untouched. The quarterback has no shot on that. I think the disappointing thing was with a lot of the sacks, too, is you're sitting here 4 weeks into the preseason. These guys have been around this offense for a long time now, going back to May. You hate to still see the same mental errors where you got guys running free. You feel bad for the quarterback because he's got no chance at that point.
Well, and they were loading up the box. I mean, Cleveland was coming at him, 9 guys in the box. How concerning is it, I guess, when you say 4 games into the preseason, and if they're one injury away from one of these guys needing to step up on the offensive line, how concerning is that right now for this coaching staff?
Yeah, I think it's probably the position that you need to add a couple more guys. I think right now in that room they've got 6 guys with some good experience, guys that they know can play. But in the NFL, you have to have 8 or 9 linemen that are ready to go. You never know what's going to happen with the injuries. So if they're going to pick up some guys off of waiver wire here over the weekend, I'd expect them to bring in a couple linemen.
All right, so we've got plenty to get to tonight in our post-game show. We've got Herman Moore and Woody Woodruff standing by. Also, we are waiting to hear the comments from head coach Matt Patricia. Dan Miller will be along shortly. One of the things we talked an awful lot about before this game, TJ, was guys trying to set themselves apart.
Yeah.
Who in your mind may or may not have done that tonight?
I think the first guy that sticks out is Brandon Powell. I mean, he's a guy who hasn't had a whole lot of playing time throughout the preseason, but he brought a whole new dimension to the special teams tonight, something that we hadn't seen throughout the first 4 games. Obviously, we know that Agnew is the main guy who's going to be returning the kicks, but if Powell's a guy that can stick around as 4th, maybe 5th receiver and also add in on special teams, I think his value went up tonight. And unfortunately, not a whole lot of other guys. It was an up and down game for the team. Josh Johnson, obviously, I thought what he did provided a spark as well.
His mobility can be special, can't it? I mean, it is a totally different type of dynamic.
It can. I mean, when you not only have to take away the receivers and the running backs, but you have to worry about the quarterback running the ball for a first down. Now that opens up more one-on-one coverage in the back end for the receivers to make plays. So I thought he provided a spark. It was pretty stagnant there for a while. Not a lot of first downs, no third down conversions. When Josh came in, started to go a little bit smoother. We saw a different type of offense that was being run.
Run over there.
He definitely provided a much-needed spark when he came in.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Brandon Powell, 67-yard return, also another for 33 yards. Woody and Herman, the Lions go 0-4 in the preseason for the first time since 1989. It has been a minute since they did that. That was the rookie season for Barry Sanders. The team went 7-9 that year. But as you guys know all too well, you can't read too much into what the preseason record is.
That is exactly right, Hammer. Can't read too much into it. Herman Moore, let's read into what Hammer was saying out on the field about Travis Fulgham and Brandon Powell. Okay, those were two guys we talked about before the game as far as trying to cement a spot on this team, because we know that fourth wide receiver position is a little bit still up in the air. So based on what you saw tonight, the sixth rounder, Fulgham, had a nice catch early, had a nice catch late. Brandon Powell and the special teams versatility, what do you think?
Well, when I look at those two guys, I really see them as the ones that kind of jumped off the page. Those are the two that, if you're going to look at this from a coaching standpoint, they had follow-up games from the previous week that contributes and shows that they're people that can contribute, or guys that can contribute to this team. Now, Brandon Powell, what I like about him is that special teams is a great way to earn a spot on a position. I think we've talked about that throughout our coverage, but I think that's where he kind of made the difference. He didn't do much on the receiving end, but he made up for that in the return game. You know,
another thing that I also liked tonight was Mark Thompson in the run game. I mean, I thought that he was really solid as far as what he did. 11 carries, 35 yards, 2 catches, and 20 yards. He showed that he's not going to go down on the first contact. He's going to drag guys along with him. That's the kind of toughness you need at that spot.
It is. He comes in, he reminds you of that power game that this team is looking for. They're trying to get the ball up the field. They're looking to where you have backs that can break tackles, that aren't afraid to lower their shoulders and get the extra yards. And when you can do that, that keeps you in those nice down and distance, you know, after a great play. And also seeing them being a part of that passing game was important as well, because that's what they're looking for from their running backs this year.
The other thing I liked about Mark Thompson was the fact that he seems to run in between the tackles. I mean, he can go outside and all that, we've seen it, but to go in between the tackles and go north and south, that's the kind of production Matt Patricia really wants to see on a day in and day out basis.
And we talk about that as being the quickest way to get upfield, you know, to go north every time you touch the football. And when you get a big back, you don't want him trying to stretch too far on the outside unless that's a design play. But watching just his bruising style and the way he runs the football, that's what you want to see out of your running back.
You know, TJ Lang had mentioned earlier the difference between Tom Savage and Josh Johnson. And when we saw Savage 3 of 9, 33 yards, but Josh Johnson seemed to take it up another notch. And I like the fact that he can use his legs a lot more and show some escapability when things break down, because sometimes that offensive line, we're letting guys come straight through, and Josh Johnson was able to work his way through and escape that.
Yeah, it was, not only was he efficient passing the football, and we saw him put up a nice drive, we saw him coming in and actually taking an offense that in the first half just wasn't getting anything done, and then also being able to run the football when needed. And not too much, he had 4 for 17 yards, but that goes a long way in terms of extending plays, also making your offense a little bit more than just a one-dimensional style when you drop back and pass.
All right, we're just getting started here on the Lions postgame show. They lose to the Browns 20-16, go 0-4 in the preseason, but the score doesn't matter. What matters is player evaluation, and we will get into more of that after this break. We'll hear from the players. We'll hear from Dan Miller back in Cleveland.
Okay, so I don't want to cover anything that you guys have already covered before I got here. Did you cover the fact that that was painful?
Yeah, we did. We said the highlight was when the clock hit triple zeros.
I mean, look, you tell me. Okay, so Jerome Boger was the star of the game with 74 penalty calls. You know. I mean, is there a time, do you have to call the penalty if you're the official, or can you just keep it in your pocket every now and then?
If I'm a coach, I'm just going to tell whatever penalty you call, we're automatically declining it. Don't even waste time. Let's go, man. It's preseason 4. Let's get out of here.
I mean, and then they come out and throw 15 passes in the first quarter, and you're just like, did they not get the memo? This is the 4th preseason game. This is a fast-track game. But not to diminish what this game means to some of the players that are out there. And you did have some guys that made some nice statements for the Lions.
No doubt.
You know, I thought Mitchell Laven, I don't know if you guys have already touched on him, but he's a guy that did some nice things. I think P.J. Johnson is a player that has gotten better throughout the preseason. I think there's, you know, Eric Lee did some good things up front. I think on the defensive line in particular tonight, there were some nice plays.
Yeah, I think Eric Lee was the one guy who consistently was able to generate a little bit of a pressure. He's a guy who has had a lot of familiarity with this defense going back, spending some time in New England, came over to Detroit last year, a lot of time on the practice squad. But when he's got a chance to play, I mean, he shows up. He showed up today. Mitch Laven, another guy, he showed up all preseason.
I think so.
It didn't matter if tonight he played almost the whole game. A couple weeks ago, I mean, he showed up. Whether it's the run game, the pass game, he was one guy who was also getting consistent pressure. So those guys like that, you know what? They have value. If you can get to the quarterback, it doesn't matter who's blocking you. If you got moves and you can disrupt the passer, you're going to find a job.
What does tonight tell you about a player, too? Because you touched on it during the pregame show. Tonight is about beating the guy in front of you.
Yeah.
It's not about scheming. It's not about any of that. This is about me against you. So what does that teach you about a player when you look at a tape like this?
You know what? I think in a basic system that you're running for these guys, you don't want them to go out there and be thinking about 10 different things. You want them just line up, go hit somebody. I think that gives you great value when you're watching the film, because you really see who can show up, who can play, who can we count on that's going to go in there. He's going to bust his butt. He's going to give us great effort. We can count on this guy to go win a job, win the play. And you know what? Not a lot of it tonight, unfortunately. Yeah. But we talked about
Cleveland had some good tape out there. Cleveland's defensive line, their tape looked good.
You know, their defensive line, their offensive line, too. Yeah. I mean, we were able to get a little bit of pressure, but you talk about their defensive line, and when I'm looking at the plays where you can't have guys running right up the middle, untouched to your quarterback or your running back, and it's disappointing to be sitting here week 4 now and still seeing some of those repeated mistakes, and ultimately you get judged on how you're going to perform under a high-pressure situation. A couple guys did, but I don't think there were enough.
It's the post-game show. Lions fall to the Browns tonight, 20-16. We're going to get in Matt Patricia when he steps up to the podium here in just a couple of minutes. Just thoughts. Look, you were a 4th-round draft pick. You knew you weren't going to be cut your first year, but you've been around guys that are sitting on the bubble.
Yes.
What is this next 36 hours like?
It's tough.
Really?
Right? It's tough. I think it's a harsh reality that sometimes you might have showed up, you might have done everything possible, you might have done everything that the coach has asked of you, and sometimes it's just not enough. The good part, though, is there's 31 other teams that are always watching every single game, so that's what you always preach. I think when you talk to Bob Quinn and you talk to Coach Patricia, these next couple of days are very hard for them, because they've had guys in that have been working so hard since April and since May, that have just been grinding and doing all of the great things. And from everything I hear, great group of guys. Great group of guys. Yeah. So you're rooting for them, and unfortunately, you can't keep them all. But what you do root for is that those guys can land somewhere else.
Absolutely, and that's what's going to happen here. Is they cut this thing from 90 to 53, and every team in the NFL does. Over 1,000 players are going to find themselves looking for work after this weekend. That's the tough part of the NFL preseason. Take a break. Come right back. Matt Patricia stepping to the podium momentarily. We'll take it.
Welcome back to the Lions postgame show. Detroit losing 20-16 to Cleveland. Herman Moore alongside me. Herman, Dan Miller and TJ Lang were talking earlier about the different mindset. What about that mindset, the shift from preseason now into the regular season?
Well, the shift with these guys that shouldn't occur is this is real now. The preseason, sometimes you can hide behind that. Sometimes you think that going out and not putting up that best effort or making those critical plays won't come back to haunt you. But this is when it gets real, and the coaches won't allow those excuses to carry over into the regular season. One thing I do want to touch on is that we talk about whether or not the preseason should be counted and players' mindset should be a certain way. I'd be a little concerned because you don't want to have the inconsistency and up and down.
Well, one guy who is concerned is head coach Matt Patricia, and he is approaching the podium right now. Let's listen in.
With the game and the outcome and everything. But I'll say this, I think our guys went out and competed hard. I think the guys, fought all the way through the game and tried to do everything they could to win, and were into it. They were involved, and they were paying attention as we were, trying to go down there and score. So proud of the guys, proud of the effort. I think all the way through training camp, I think everybody's worked really hard. I think they've tried to do everything they could to show us their skill sets and, what they can do to help us during the regular season. We obviously got a lot of work in front of us as far as that's concerned. So, really with the game itself, just too many mistakes, too many penalties to really allow us to get out of the hole there as far as some of the plays were concerned. I think we had some big plays out there. We left some plays out there because of the mistakes we made, and those are things that we got to just continue to eliminate. So, I think that was the biggest problem in the game for us in order to stay on track. And like I said, I was proud of our guys working really hard to go compete all the way to the end. I think the guys were fighting hard to try to win, and that's important. There's a great value to that, so it was good to see.
Fans might get a little hung up on the 0-4 preseason. What did you learn about your team?
Yeah, I think that's a great question as far as, the learning process that we go through through training camp. The games themselves are difficult, and we're trying to win every single game that we play, certainly, by all means. But I thought if you look at the big body of work of what we did and some of the competitive practices that we had versus two very good teams, back-to-back, one at our place, one down in the heat down in Texas, I think our team showed a lot of character from that standpoint and their willingness to go out and ignore everything else that was going on and work really hard. Like I said, I think the guys in general through training camp, they tried to compete. They tried to go out every single day and get better. Really had our head down, and we just grinded all the way through camp. Right now, obviously, the biggest part of it for us is try to make the best decisions we can for the team going forward, and to help us try to go win during the regular season. It's a long process. The NFL season is, it's a grind, and there's a whole other phase that we got to get into here through the month of September. But right now, for tonight, like I said, I'm proud of this group. I think they care about each other. I think they really enjoy each other. I think they work really hard, and that's great to see. I think as a coach, when you can stand in front of a group of men that just want to go out and make each other better and perform at a high level, it's something you can really appreciate.
You talked about guys, you talked this week about guys taking this opportunity to step up and make some plays. Eric Lee was a guy who did that a little bit. Powell had a couple nice returns. What about Travis Fulgham as well, being able to make some plays down the field in that kind of tight receiver competition?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Those are some names that obviously stood out in a couple plays there. But I would say really for me with the game, I'm going to have to go back and look at the tape because there just was so many I thought plays that got us off track, so many negative plays that we had to try to overcome within the game from that standpoint that, the situations were hard to evaluate. The individual play, we'll go back and we'll look at the tape. There was, like I said, like you mentioned, a couple players that stood out in particularly some of those plays, but as a whole body of work, I just think there was a lot of mistakes that we got to look at.
Matt, building on Kyle's question a little bit, just vanilla schematics, not a whole lot of starters in the preseason.
Yeah.
Where's your confidence level heading into week one with what this roster can do in the regular season?
Yeah, I think for us, I think the confidence level that we build is through the course of practice and like I said, the competition that we had against the two teams that we practiced against. That's always good. I honestly think, confidence as far as an NFL team, you probably aren't making it to this level if you don't have some sort of level of confidence in general. I think the big challenge for us, like it is for every NFL team right now, is to push from this point on. And the teams that are able to grow and build and improve through the course of the season, through these different markers that we'll set as we get into the regular season, those are the ones that'll be there in the end, and that's really our next challenge. It's a whole new kind of entity in and of itself that we do have to develop our team and see what we're going to be as we go forward.
Those are some of the comments from Lions head coach Matt Patricia and Herman Moore. He talked about pride, being proud about the effort that the players gave tonight, but now it's all about results. That's what he needs to see.
Well, you're right on. It's going to be about the results. The effort should always be a part of it. Mm-hmm. Some of these things should just be givens. It's not so much that you have to extract that from your players. With Coach Patricia, this consistency, he's going to be looking for players to not put themselves in the bad holes that they were in, and you got to avoid some of those penalties.
Players have learning curves. Matt Patricia has a learning curve too in year 2 with new offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell. We'll talk more about that on the other side of the break. You're in touch with the
All right, back on our post-game show, Dan Miller, TJ Lang. Lions fall to the Browns 20-16. We'll get TJ's final thoughts coming up in a moment. Guys, we're trying to make statements tonight. Brandon Powell, one of the guys that had a chance to do that, had a couple of big returns. He spoke in the locker room moments ago.
Basically what I've been doing all my life, just play football, going back to what I know, and that's just, have fun and, be a playmaker. And that's all I was trying to do. It helped me out.
When you look back at the full body of work, Brandon, just from the beginning all the way through, do you feel like you've done enough to earn a spot?
I don't worry about that. I just, go play football. I just know I play football, and if, a decision to be made, that's out of my control. I'm just going to go through this weekend like any other day, and that's it.
I know that you give credit to the guys blocking for you on those returns, but tell me about just the 67-yarder and how special that feels in this game.
Y'all saw I just ran, basically. I didn't have to do anything but just pick a hole and run. Everybody made their blocks. There was a couple holes I could have ran through, but, I just, I shout out to those 10 dudes blocking for me. They all was, trying to earn a job just like me, and they, they did their job. So I put my hats off to them.
All right, Brandon Powell, have to find out what happens this weekend when the Lions cut that roster down. Let's move ahead. Arizona coming up a week from Sunday. Let's move beyond roster cuts. You're a frontline player on this team. What's your thought process now?
Hey, now they start counting. It's unfortunate they couldn't find a win in the preseason, just so the young guys kind of know what it's like to have success. But they count now, right? You got no more room for error, no more room for mistakes. I like what we saw from Stafford when he was out there a couple weeks ago with the first team offense, able to move the ball well, looked really good passing. I'm excited to see the run game, though. I think it's all going to start to come together. Obviously, first full week of preparation these guys are going to have together as a team.
Good job, my friend. This retirement thing works out well for you.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
It was fun. TJ Lang, thanks to Herman Moore as well, to Woody, to Jen, to everybody involved in the pregame show, and in the postgame show, and all the people you don't see behind the scenes. We appreciate everybody putting this thing together. That'll do it from here. Preseason is over. It is